Hello everyone, George here, and we're back with my missed class lecture. We're going to have a very quick lesson on how we can utilize a single touch on our device, work with it, and then use it inside of our game engine. Now, we're not going to be touching on multi-touch events just yet. For the most part, what we're going to be dealing with is the onTouch listener. And if you were to create a custom class of view, as we've done before, you would be implementing onTouch listener or onTouch yourself, and you would get back an emotion event from that. A motion event, not an emotion event. That's not what we're talking about today. But the idea is that a gesture itself is one or more fingers on the screen, and it's a pattern that has to be interpreted if you want to deal with a gesture. Now, you can create your own custom gestures and interpret however a person decides to press on the screen, but Android also provides support for default gestures that can be handled. All triggers are going to deal with the callback onTouch event. You're going to get that motion event, and you're going to handle it. We're going to have things like down, move, up, cancel, or outside of an area. Now, the gesture detector class, which we're not talking about yet, can handle things like default things such as double taps, long presses, flings, or scrolling and so forth. And that's for later on. Within the game engine itself, those ones don't quite make as much sense, although things like long press or maybe fling would matter if you're thinking about maybe long pressing for a menu or flinging if you're playing, Angry Birds or something like that. But even those you can implement yourself by just tracking the velocity as the player moves their finger around. Anyway, we're dealing with motion events. When you're dealing with a non-custom view, which is what we're handling right now, we're going to be dealing with implementing an onTouch listener, and we're going to be providing that with a method that we fulfill. If we were to return true from that method, it means, yes, we have handled any event that comes through. If we return false, it means Android needs to handle that event. So make sure you return true, otherwise you might get a functionality from Android itself that you are not intending to have happen. Now I don't know why I have 3 here, but there's 2, TWO, important events that you need to handle, at least within the game engine that we're dealing with right now. And that is where the user pressed in the X and Y location. You're going to be getting each of those for a particular view object. And since our view is filling the entire space of our camera, because we created a theme that does that, a display, we're going to be getting a pixel value across the entirety of that. Now remember, the origin is in the top left of it with Y positive going down. So make sure you understand that when you look at these values. And you will be getting floating point values, not integer values. So things are sub-pixel. And as you've noted, hopefully, I've been working mainly with floating point values throughout this entire thing. And that's because if we have enough time in the semester, we will jump into OpenGL, which primarily deals with floating point values. We're going to be getting an action from our motion event by calling motionEvent.getAction. We'll be looking at the case of a switch case of down, move, or up. We're not going to really care about cancel. What does cancel actually mean? If you decide to pick your finger up, is that canceling? No, because that's an up. So yeah, just ignore that for now. So ignore this slide. We're not going to create a new application. So if we make this implement view.onTouch listener, we should be okay to move forward. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go down here and Alt-Insert onTouch, Alt-Insert, and we'll do a override method onTouch. There we are, enter. Now that'll handle that event. And let's go ahead and make this happen. Now we're going to return true because we will handle this event occurring. And now we need our switch statement, right? So switch. And now we just handle each one of these motion events. So event.getAction. And now we just put in our different actions. So let's do case motion event.action down, break. And I'm going to copy and paste this line a couple times to make my life easier. There we are. And we'll do move next. So down, or up actually, up. And then we'll handle move. And you won't handle cancel. Cancel doesn't matter. Okay, so each one of those gets handled properly. Now all we need to do is implement some code in each of these. So what should we do? Well, I think that when we decide to pull up off the screen, maybe we should generate a new polygon object. So I'm going to copy this polygon object right here that we have, and I'm going to paste that in onUp, and I'm going to go ahead and do, let's see, game object dot add temp, but actually no, you know what? Let's just do this straight off. So let's just do game object objects.add, and we'll add this entire thing to it. All right. So we're going to add a new object to it, and I am going to increment how many sides it has. So it's going to start at, let's make a variable up called num sides. Okay. So num sides is going to be an integer value, and we'll create this up here. So private int num sides is equal to 3 to start with. And each time we decide to call this method, we're going to increment the number of sides that we actually have. So here it creates one. We're going to get rid of that line where we create one by default. Okay? And instead, we are going to create one right here. And then we're going to increment the number of sides after that. So num sides plus plus. And we're also not going to pass in the screen width and the screen height. Instead, we're going to grab from the event itself and use that information. So let's do event.getX and event.getY. All right. Okay, so now whenever we press down, we're going to be spawning a polygon at these locations with the number of sides equal to how many we've actually pressed. Let's go ahead and hit run, bring up an emulator, and see what happens. So here we go. I'm adding our different objects to the scene. And we can see as I do that, we get objects that look more and more and more like a circle. And because I still have my rotation code in there, each one is slowly rotating as well, which is kind of cool. Now we've got circles because they're so many sided. And you'll notice that the frame rate really hasn't dropped at all. I mean, we've got quite a bit of calculations going on for each one of these, you know, and the higher up I clicked on those particular events, the more calculations are going on. So it's doing a pretty good job. Anyway, that was the very incredibly simple way for you to implement onTouch inside of your game view class. So in the next video, we're going to jump ahead now and start implementing being able to touch things by using bitmap objects instead. Hope to see you then. So long, goodbye.